There's something I've learned over the years of working with older adults. Most of the pain we carry doesn't come from illness or even age, but from silence, misunderstanding, and words we didn't mean to share. We speak from love, but not always from wisdom. In this video, I want to gently walk you through 7 common things we sometimes say to our children, thinking we're helping, when really we might be pushing them away. Let's take a quiet, thoughtful look at each one, together. You know, one of the first things I often hear is, shouldn't I be honest with my kids about my past? And I get it, there's this need to open up, to be fully seen. But sometimes too much honesty, especially about your old mistakes, can make your children see you differently, not with more love, but with confusion or distance. Sharing every wrong decision or painful memory might feel freeing to you, but it can place a burden on them that they never asked to carry. I once worked with Harold, 67, from Mesa, Arizona. One Thanksgiving, he decided to tell his adult son that in the early years of his marriage, he had been unfaithful. He said he wanted to come clean and clear the air. What happened was the opposite. His son pulled away, started visiting less often, and eventually admitted he could never look at his father the same way again. It wasn't about the past, it was about the image of his dad he had lost. Another client, Barbara, 72, told me she regretted telling her daughter about a time in her 20s when she left home for 2 weeks without telling anyone. Her daughter, who always saw her as responsible and dependable, now brings it up in arguments. Barbara didn't expect that kind of shift, and it hurt. What often helps is keeping the focus on what you learned rather than what you did. Try something simple like, I've made choices I'm not proud of, but I learned from them, and I'm here for you if you ever face something hard. It shares your growth, not your guilt. You don't need to pour out every secret to be close to your children. Sometimes holding your past with quiet dignity speaks louder than confession. You deserve to be seen for the strength you've built, not just the roads you had to walk to get there. The second thing that often creates distance, without first realizing it, is when we constantly talk about how hard life is now. It usually comes from a place of loneliness or sadness, but when all our conversations with our children center on pain, aches, and how no one visits or cares, it becomes overwhelming for them. They start to associate every call or visit with guilt, and that makes them pull away even more. The truth is, no one wants to feel like they're never enough. I remember Margaret, a 72-year-old retired teacher from Illinois. She would call her daughter every evening, hoping for a comforting chat. But instead, most of the calls turned into long lists of complaints about her back pain, about being ignored, about how much better things used to be. Her daughter, juggling a full-time job and 2 kids, began answering less and less. When I asked Margaret why, she sighed and said, maybe she just doesn't care anymore. But when we looked closer, it wasn't about not caring, it was about emotional exhaustion. Another man I counseled, Leon, 69, from Oregon, realized he hadn't asked his son a single question about his life during their last 5 phone calls. That changed everything for him. One of the simplest ways to shift this is by leading with love, not loneliness. Try saying, I know life gets busy, but I'm so glad to hear your voice. Tell me how you've been. And if you do need support, say it gently, like an invitation, not a plea. You're allowed to feel what you feel. But when you lead with warmth and light, even if only a little, you create space for your children to come closer. You deserve connection that lifts you both, not weighs anyone down. Another thing that slowly erodes respect, though it's often said with good intentions, is constant criticism of your children's choices. Whether it's about who they married, how they raised their kids, or even what job they took, it can come across as rejection, not concern. When older parents say, I'm just being honest, what the child often hears is, you're not good enough, and that can sit heavy on a heart for years. I had a client named John, 70, from Tallahassee, Florida. He adored his son, but couldn't accept his daughter-in-law. Every time they met, John would make small jabs, how she dressed, how she talked, even how she cooked. Eventually, his son stopped coming around. I just can't be in the middle anymore, he told him. Another woman I worked with, Irene, 68, from Colorado Springs, kept reminding her daughter she was making a mistake by not going back to college. What she didn't see was how much pressure that put on a single mom barely making ends meet. The more Irene insisted, the more distance grew between them. When we talked, she said, "I only wanted better for her. But better doesn't always mean the same for everyone. One of the kindest shifts you can make is asking instead of telling. Try saying, 'I might not fully understand, but I trust you're doing what's best for you.' That one sentence can change the whole tone of a conversation. You've lived a full life and your wisdom matters, but so does the freedom of those you love. When you offer support instead of correction, you become someone they want to turn to, not hide from. You still matter deeply, even when you simply listen." Something else I often see, especially in more open families, is the urge to share old romantic stories, flings, regrets, wild moments from youth. It might feel like you're bonding, showing your human side. But when those stories include infidelity, secret affairs, or choices that go against the values your children believed you held, it can quietly damage the respect they feel. What was once seen as your strong moral compass suddenly seems less steady. I remember Susan, 68, from Sacramento, who told her adult daughter over lunch about a passionate affair she had with a married man in her 30s. She thought it would be a powerful story of regret and self-growth. Instead, her daughter went silent, then said, "I wish you hadn't told me that." Their relationship changed after that. Another client, Martin, 73, once confessed to his son that he had loved someone else more than his wife. The boy's mother. The son, now in his 40s, admitted in therapy he never looked at his parents' marriage the same again. "It made everything feel fake," he said. And Martin, years later, still wished he had kept that truth to himself. What often works better is to share the lesson, not the story. You might say, "I've learned that love is complex and staying loyal takes work, but I've also learned it's worth it." That way, your children get the value without the emotional burden. Some memories are meant to guide us, not weigh others down. You have every right to your past, but you also have the wisdom to know what serves and what simply stirs the dust. Something that slips into conversations more often than we realize is the habit of minimizing what our children are going through. It might sound like, "You think that's hard?" or "Back in my day, we didn't have time to complain." But for the person hearing it, especially your adult child, it can feel like you're saying their struggles don't matter. And when people feel unseen or dismissed, even in small ways, they start to pull back emotionally. I worked with Michael, 65, from Chattanooga, who told his daughter during a phone call, "You have a car, a job, a nice house. What are you even stressed about?" His daughter didn't respond right away, but a week later she stopped calling altogether. Months went by. When she finally visited, she quietly told him, "I just don't feel safe sharing things with you anymore." Another woman, Estelle, 70, from Boise, kept telling her son that parenting today is so easy compared to what she went through. He stopped inviting her to family dinners, saying he felt judged every time she was around. Neither parent meant harm, but their words built walls. One of the simplest shifts is to listen first, then validate. Try saying, "That sounds like a lot to carry. I'm proud of how you're handling things." Even if their life looks easier on the outside, the stress they feel is real. You don't have to agree with everything they say, but meeting them with empathy opens a door. It says, "I'm here with you, not above you." And that kind of support is remembered for a lifetime. Something I hear more often than I'd like is when older adults say, sometimes with a shrug, "I've lived my life. Nothing matters much now." And while that might feel true on a hard day, saying it aloud, especially around your children, can be quietly heartbreaking for them. It sounds like giving up. And even if you don't mean it that way, your words carry weight. Your children may start to feel helpless, unsure how to respond, or even avoid you to escape that heaviness. Ruth, 73, from Spokane, used to tell her grandkids, "I'm just old news now. You don't need to bother with me." She said it as a joke, but over time the kids stopped calling. Her daughter gently told her, "They're scared you don't want them around." And I remember Daniel, 75, from Pittsburgh, who once told his son, "I'm just waiting for the end." That sentence stayed with his son for years like a shadow. He told me, after that, every visit felt like a goodbye. What Daniel meant, as honesty came across as loss and finality, what helps is offering hope in small everyday ways. Try saying, "Fu, there's still so much I enjoy, and I love sharing it with you." Even if your days are quieter now, they still hold meaning, especially to those who love you. You're not fading, you're still shining in a different way. And the light you give now, through stories, warmth, presence, is just as needed as ever. Don't dim yourself too soon. Another tender but tricky area is when older parents start revealing old family secrets. Things like infidelity from past generations, hidden debts, or personal traumas that were never spoken about before. It might feel like clearing the air or offering transparency, but sometimes these confessions, especially when dropped suddenly, can shake the foundation your children built their identity on. They may not feel closer to you. They may feel destabilized or even betrayed. Glenda, 69, from Asheville, told her adult son that his grandfather had once been in jail for theft, something no one in the family had ever mentioned. She thought it was time he knew the truth. But for her son, who had always spoken with pride about his grandfather, the news hit like a punch. He became distant, asking, "What else don't I know?" Another man, Paul, 74, from Detroit, shared with his daughter that her aunt was actually her half-sister. It came out during a casual conversation, and the emotional fallout lasted for years. What was meant to set the record straight instead created confusion, grief, and mistrust. One way to approach these truths more gently is to ask yourself, is this helping them grow, or is it just relieving my burden? If it's the latter, maybe that truth is best shared with a counselor, not your child. You are the keeper of your family's story, but part of that role is knowing when silence is an act of care. Not every truth needs to be spoken to be honored. You can still protect what matters most: love, safety, and connection. If any of these reflections touched your heart, I want you to know you're not alone. Relationships evolve, and so do we. It's never too late to soften a word, shift a habit, or reach out with kindness. In the end, your presence, not your perfection, is what your children will carry with them. If something here helped, I invite you to leave a comment and share your thoughts. And if you'd like more gentle guidance, subscribe and ring the bell. We're walking this road together.